Isaac Collins is a licensed and board-certified master social worker with over 15 years of experience in individual, couples, and family therapy. Isaac's area of clinical focus includes anxiety and depression disorders, adjustment issues, major life transitions, childhood trauma, relationships, and overall social and emotional wellness. Isaac utilizes the cognitive behavioral psychotherapy approach, which places a high value on helping clients understand their thoughts and feelings that influence their behaviors. Isaac is a frequent workshop presenter on topics related to restorative practices, anger management, conflict resolution, and youth development. Isaac received his master's degree in social work from the University of Buffalo in New York and his certification from the state of New York. Isaac also holds an advanced degree in educational leadership and other mental health counseling certifications. In this segment, we'll be discussing Isaac's top 10 questions to ask when looking for a therapist. What questions to ask when looking for a therapist?
Yes. I find that finding the right therapist can involve as much energy and time as finding the right spouse. And to be honest with you, it usually involves similar stages in progression as a relationship, right? Because when you're entering into a relationship with the potential therapist, you want to make sure that you understand who that person is and that person understands who you are. So that way you can maximize on the treatment that you're going to receive from that professional. And I came up with a few questions that I think will be very beneficial and vital for any potential client looking for therapy to ask their potential therapist. And would you like me to go down the list of the questions?
Please. Yes, that is awesome. I love that you came prepared with the questions already written out.
Yes, I did type them out. I have 10 questions that I believe are vital to finding the right therapist for yourself. And I think number one is, what are your strengths as a therapist? Understanding what that particular therapist specializes in is extremely important because, like you mentioned earlier, my specialty, if you will, is men issues, social and emotional wellness, trauma, are the things that I kind of deal with. So I wouldn't want you to come see me if you're having other issues outside of that I particularly don't specialize in.
Sure.
So what are your strengths as a therapist is the first one. What is your style? Are you more follow the leader or lead as I follow type of therapist? You have some who kind of take that directive role and kind of lead the client into the areas in which they want to express these things. And then you have more laid back therapists who kind of take the lead from the client and allow them to express where they want to go and kind of aid them in their mobility of getting there. Another question that I would highly encourage potential clients to ask is, what type of therapy are you trained in? As we mentioned before, you have CBT, you have so many different therapies. And so just myself being trained in multiple therapies, but my main therapy style is cognitive behavioral therapy. So you want to make sure that you understand what that style is. And then you also want to make sure that they offer the style that you believe is best when suiting the presenting mental health concern that you're coming with. What are the advantages and disadvantages to different approaches to treatment? Talk therapy versus medication therapy. That's extremely important to ask a potential therapist as well, to see if he or she agrees with combining the two. You have some who completely believe in talk therapy only. And you have some who are highly in agreement with medication therapy along with talk therapy. So figuring out what the advantages and disadvantages to those type of therapies are. You also want to know, and this is an important one, you also want to know, what is your fee and do you accept insurance? Therapy can be rather expensive for some therapists, but you also want to ask if they have a sliding fee scale. So if you're paying out of pocket, it's extremely important to know if they have a sliding fee scale, or is your insurance accepted by that particular provider or therapist? Those are questions to make sure that the treatment is you don't have to worry about the cost of the treatment, and you can really focus on getting better.
Mm-hmm.
The next question I have is, how would you assess my progress? I think that's very important because I think it's fair for a potential client to understand how, as the professional, are you going to assess how am I doing in treatment? What milestones should I be hitting by what sessions? How can I maximize on treatment? Is there anything that I can do outside of our sessions to help speed up my recovery or my treatment process? Those things are important to ask. And then number 8 says, how many sessions would you recommend to address my presenting problem? And this really tackles the short-term versus the long-term therapy. Is it something, and I'll use trauma as an example. Trauma has several different stages, right? You have the perpetual traumatic events that kind of trigger some things in you, and then you have isolated or situational trauma where it doesn't last always. There might have been a hurricane that came through your particular living space or residence and probably destroyed your home or your belongings. And although that hurricane has passed, your belongings you're looking to recoup, and also at the same time you may have gotten hurt in the natural disaster. So you want to kind of walk through those feelings and kind of help that person get back to a baseline, is what we call it, so that they can continue to thrive in the remainder of their lives. And then you may have more of a long-term type of trauma situation where you were molested as a child, and your perpetrator happened to be a close friend or a family member that you still frequently see at family gatherings, or they may live close by your home. And so you're reminded of that trauma and that incident every time you see that particular person. So walking through with the therapist how to kind of unpack some of those things may take a longer a time period. So you want to make sure you know how many sessions would the therapist recommend, and in what ways is your practice culturally responsive? That's very important as well. Yeah. Considering that there's not many minority therapists, mental health therapists. So you want to make sure that that practice is culturally responsive to your background and what you offer to the table, because there's different healing processes for different cultures. So understanding how that therapist will encompass or incorporate your culture and your background to make sure that you have that culturally responsive treatment that you deserve.
Right.
And then what are the demographics of your current clientele? Do you see more female than male? Do you have a younger population or elderly population? And then this last question that I would have to ask, or I think that clients should ask their potential therapist, is kind of a bold question, but I think an important question. And that is, have you been in therapy yourself?
Ooh, I like that one a lot.
Yeah. And some clients are, more reserved in those questions and asking that particular question. But I think that if you're trying to really find out who this person is that's going to present you or help you get through your emotional dysregulation, I think it's important to ask that question. So I put it on the list.
Right. I love that. I love that question. That's one that I would never have even considered to ask my therapist, but I know it's important. You all take on so much with hearing your clients' traumas and trying to help them cope with their own healing process. And so it is really important that you all are seeking therapy of your own to help release that. So yeah, that's a really good question. I like that a lot.
Thank you.